Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Nickel City Mafia YouTube channel. I'm joined today on the Jags Golf Podcast by Tony Altieri. How you doing, Tony?
I'm good, Mike. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm super excited about this week. This is our second week back at it, and we have a little bit to recap on the 2021 U.S. Open, which was fantastic. Great finish.
A lot to talk about.
We
a
do.
lot to talk about.
So a couple of things before we get into the Travelers and kind of look at how your model ended up panning out. Let's talk a little bit about a couple stories that developed here on Sunday. So first of all, let's talk about Jon Rahm. I mean, amazing Sunday. I mean, I was glued to my couch the whole day. The dude was on fire. You just knew if he got the putter going, it was going to be his for the taking, right? And that's exactly what happened on the 17th and 18th. You want to talk about a big boy putt? Two of them in a row, and these were left to righters. I mean, what were they, 15, 20 feet out, maybe even more, a little
Absolutely.
bit? It was amazing. So talk to me a little about Rahm. Where was he? I think he was expected to win this, right? But go ahead.
Yeah, Jon Rahm was the odds-on favorite coming into the week. You know, he's got phenomenal history, not only at Torrey Pines, but all over the California coast. And I think the narrative behind it that I had mentioned before is, hey, look, if you're going to lose to the best guy in the field, the odds-on favorite in the field, that's just the roll of the dice. And if you're a guy like me who bets on golf, his odds at 10 to 1, 11 to 1, wherever you're getting them at, they weren't enticing enough. I thought, is he two times better than, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas? But I think what he showed is that he was ready for the spotlight. I think the big thing, the narrative that surrounded him in the golf community is he was he is or was the best player without a major coming into this tournament. And for him to be the favorite, coming off COVID, withdrawing from the Memorial Tournament, all of the narratives that were kind of around him, the fact that he was a new father, this was his first Father's Day, I don't think you could have scripted it better for him. I will say this, the books are probably licking their chops today, or I should say Monday, right? Because not a lot of people were betting Jon Rahm to win at 10 to 1 when you could grab guys, like I mentioned, up the board for 5, 6, 10 points better, guys who had won majors. But down the stretch, especially through the back nine, he performed better than anybody else. And to hit 2 birdie putts, 2, not 1.
Yeah,
but
first
2,
guy to ever do that at U.S. Open.
Yeah, 2 downhill birdie putts of 10 to 15 feet in length. Difficult putts. I mean, the decision on 18 when he ended up in the trap, instead of going for the pin, right, because of all the danger, the fact that the water was right there, he chips out right of the pin, and people start to second guess, like, man, he still got 15, 20 feet for birdie. He just hit a big one last hole, and he drains it. It just shows that he was ready for the spotlight, and there's been a lot of people have talked about his maturity, whether or not he was able to be there, whether he could be one of the best players in the world because the skill set was there. And I think he showed a lot of people that he was ready for the spotlight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he was hitting the greens all day. I just knew if any of those putts started going in, this was going to be his. And super great story. Like you said, couldn't be scripted any better. Being a father for the first time, Father's Day as a father. I mean, come on, you couldn't, Hollywood couldn't have scripted it out any better. So super cool, excited for him. And a little bit of karma, like you said, he had to withdraw. He was winning by 6 strokes at the previous tournament he was in. I saw a little clip on how bummed he was when he got the news. He was on the course when he got the news that he had tested positive for COVID and had to withdraw. So super happy for him. And like I said, couldn't have ended any better. And there was just so many people in contention going into the last day. It was amazing. And we're talking about big names, right? We had DeChambeau. We had Rory right there. I mean, Louis, obviously, but some of the big names were right there, including Rahm. And I want to touch a little bit on DeChambeau. What happened there? The guy is at 9. I think he's in the lead. And then what happens? He just falls apart. This was your guy to win this thing.
Yeah, I think the first point that you made about what the tournament was shaping up to be going into the early part of Sunday, right, through the first 9 holes of Sunday, we talked about the fact that the U.S. Open is a big boy course. You got to be a bomber if you want to be in contention. It's made for the best players in the world. And if you look at the leaderboard headed into, I don't know, the first 5, 6, even 10 holes of Sunday, you had everybody up there. You had Bryson, you had Rory, you had Jon Rahm, you had all of these guys making a huge push to try and win the U.S. Open. I mean, again, it was phenomenal. Even Xander, who was at 1 under, he got to a point where he was 2 under midway through the tournament. You thought, man, this is really up for grabs. Where Louis was basically treading water at the top of the leaderboard and not really making any ground on the field. You had Mackenzie Hughes and Russell Henley, who everybody knew would probably end up falling back on Sunday. But, again, the top of the leaderboard was exactly how you would expect it to be on Sunday at a U.S. Open. I think the big thing with Bryson was, man, as a guy who had him, right, 18-1, I had bet him way early in the season, so it was a futures bet for me. I felt really good about that. Through 63, 64 holes of the major championship, I was counting my chips. And I make the mistake that I think every unseasoned bettor does is I start thinking in my head, man, I've got Bryson to win this thing. He's going to pull it off. I've got Casey as a top 5 in a top 10. I've got Louis as a top 5 in a top 10. So I started counting all the money that I was going to win when Bryson wins this thing. And of course, he has a stretch. He goes 11, 12, 13. He goes bogey, bogey, double, and that's it. It evaporated for him. I mean, and once he hit that double, I think it was on 12 or 13, that was it. He just kind of cashed in his chips. He was trying to hit hero shots down the stretch, shots that he had no business hitting. And you could just tell, like, the air was out of the balloon. And in some respect, I felt bad as a guy that had money on him, right? Because I'm like, man, he was so close, and to gag it away over 3 holes was frustrating. But at the same point in time, that's the U.S. Open. That happens every year where a guy coming down the stretch is making a run, and he just gas cans his weekend. And unfortunately for me, it was Bryson. But again, for all the things that happened, I still have a lot of confidence in him. I like him this week in Connecticut. I still think he's going to do a lot of great things. And guess what? U.S. Open next year, it's the same recipe for success. So you're going to see his name at the top of the leaderboard, at the top of the odds. He'll be one of the highest priced guys on Draftkings, and it'll be rinse and repeat next year.
Yeah, for a split second there, even Brooks was up the board. He got to 3 under at the turn, and I'm like, here comes Brooks. I mean, the guy is just solid under pressure. I thought he was going to be able to get a couple more in there, but then of course he hit a couple bad holes. So like you said, it's the U.S. Open, but just great with all the talent that was up there, and these were the best of the best. And even Rory just kept coming back, kept fighting back. I thought he was going to get there, but because he's way overdue. So great Sunday. Couldn't ask for a better finish. Let's talk a little bit about the controversy that happened towards the end of that tournament there. You and I disagree a little bit on this, and it's about Louis, right? So Louis, what's going to keep him up at night is that 17th hole, his drive, right? Everyone was playing it to the right to be safe. Whether you went into the bunker or not, you could get to the green pretty easily. It was a great angle into the greens. He goes for it, tries to hit that fairway, which was super narrow. And of course he misses to the left, penalty shot. Oh my God. He's just about to blow it. So he bogeys, unfortunately. Now he needs an eagle going into 18. He had just come off of birdie, and eagle on the 18th hole, right? So you're thinking, all right, he's got a shot. It's also the easiest hole on the golf course. So he hits his drive. Unfortunately, again, it goes to the left. It's in the rough, right? It's in the rough. He's 247 yards from the green, Tony. 247. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not reaching with any club. But that's my game. But anyhow, he's 247. You can see him walk up there talking to his caddy, and you could just see he just doesn't have the confidence, and he pretty much calls it, I'm just going to lay it up. And he lays it up to 69 yards away and tries to put it in from 69 yards, almost impossible odds. Now, personally, Tony, being a little selfish, I was okay with that for a couple reasons. One, I had him in all my lineups, and if he bogeys or doubles on DraftKings for me, my lineups are going to take a hit, and I'm not going to get any of that money back. So that was one reason. But the second reason, I'm like, hey, nobody knows his game better than Louis, right? And you're going to disagree with me on this, but if he can't hit it, he might be thinking to himself, I got 3 girls that I support, 3 daughters, and the difference between second and third place and even fourth place is huge. So let's talk about that, right? So if he bogeys, let's say he goes for it, he goes in the pond. By the way, he had the pond straight in front of him, right? Let's say he goes into the pond or he goes out of bounds somewhere, and he chances are that he's most likely going to bogey. That puts him in a tie with English, and you and I did the math. At that point, he loses about 200K, right? And then if he doubles, now he's in the mix. He's in the mix with the third place guys, and they got to split all that money. And at that point, he loses about 500K. Now I know you think these guys, that's nothing for them. It's a lot of money, in my opinion, Tony. So I think he made the right choice, but you don't agree. So give me your side of it.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the difference between first, or I should say second and third or fourth, is probably more important to his caddy than it is to Louis. And I think that's why his caddy was like, hey, if you don't have this shot, don't hit it, right? Because his caddy's thinking, okay, I get 10, 15% or whatever this guy does. If he's about to whack, I don't know, a couple $100,000 off that total, that hurts my pocketbook. With all that being said, for me, what it comes down to is that Louis got more second place finishes than anybody I think that's on tour today in majors, which is crazy, right? He's got six of them. Yeah. And to me, to walk up, to have the ability to think, okay, if I knock this stiff and hit the eagle putt, I push this into overtime. We're going to a playoff, and I have an opportunity to win the U.S. Open. And to me, for him to step up and say, I don't have that shot, I'm 99.9% sure I can't hit it, you're a professional golfer. You're one of the best players in the world. Give it a rip. If you come in second, third, fourth, at this point it doesn't matter. You gave up your shot to win the tournament. I get the economics behind it. I understand it. But at the same point in time, and maybe it's just the way we are as Americans, right? We're a little egotistical. If you're not winning, you're losing. And maybe that's just my viewpoint on things. Being a guy that played athletics, competed, coming in second place it's first loser. And for Louis to wear that label, right? To me, that's terrible. To be the guy with the most silver medals all time, like that's a joke to me. That tells me you don't have the ability to close. And again, to walk away from that opportunity, and I get it, it's less than 1% that he hits that shot.
1%, easily.
At the same point in time, it's 0% when you walk away from it. And that's the part of it that I took issue with.
It wasn't 0%, I get Tony. It. He could have hit that 69-yard shot in, right?
Again, he could have, but what are the odds of trying to chip one in from 60, 70 yards off the green versus, the shot of trying to hit it to eagle and give yourself a putt? Again, even if, let's say he smoked one and ended up in the bunker, there's still an opportunity to hit a bunker shot and have it go in the hole. Again, they're all low percentage shots, but to me, he walked away from the opportunity to win the U.S. Open, and that's the part of it that I took issue with. Hey, the guy still came in second place. He hit a birdie putt for outright second. That says something about him. He's a good dude. He's a quality golfer. But to me, like, he'll never be on that upper echelon of guys that have that killer instinct, that are willing to put it on the line, guys that win major championships. So for me, I kind of give a thumb to the nose to Louis for walking away from all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's one of the few that has been second place in all the majors at one time. But let me ask you this. Louis not a big hitter. 247 yards is not a short distance. What clubs are he going to have to use to hit that for Louis?
Well, I mean, I think Rahm had one from 227 and he had a 4-iron. So let's say Louis a club, maybe a half a club shorter from Jon Rahm. He's probably going to have to hit 3-wood or 5-wood from that lie, maybe a hybrid. To get it to carry that distance. He's got to hit something high that sticks. It can't run out on him. So, again, maybe a hybrid, maybe a 3-wood, maybe a 5-wood. I realized the lie was not great. Again, any way that you shape it, whatever club you're hitting, it's a low percentage shot, but you still got an opportunity. And like I said, to just walk away from it, that to me was I don't know. It borders on cowardice for me to walk away from an opportunity to win a major championship.
Yeah. I mean, again, I can see why he would have done what he did. And again, there's a lot of people that are questioning it like you. And hey, that's just Louis. I mean, the guy just doesn't show much emotion. I know he wanted to win it. I know he's super disappointed. And he'll be there again. Hopefully, he'll have another chance. Because I really like Louis. Louis is just one of those good guys out on the course, and yeah, I would love to. I was trying to see if somebody really questioned him and kind of said, "Hey, Louis, what's the deal?" But no one was really pushing him that I could find in any clips. I would have loved to hear what it was, what his true thinking was. I mean, all I hear is that he's happy with what he did and he would do it again. But I would love to have someone hit him up a little harder on that and say, "Dude, you had a chance to win a major and you didn't go for it. What the heck?"
Yeah, I mean, Louis is one of the good guys in golf. He's got a good reputation. He's well liked. He's a guy that's won multiple times internationally. He does have a major championship when he won the British Open, but the guy's never won a PGA Tour event on American soil. Had an opportunity to do it. Like I said, my opinion is walked away from it. It's here or there. He's the only guy that's really got to live with that decision, right? He's got to look himself in the mirror and figure, maybe I had a chance. I don't know. Maybe that shot is the difference between getting in the Golf Hall of Fame and not. We don't know what Louis is going to do. He's by no means old. He's 38 years old. He's probably got another 10 years of quality golf. So I think there's still an opportunity for him to be able to go out there and do great things. But, man, just to give it up, to walk away from it without taking your shot, I don't know. I could not look myself in the mirror if I was Louis Oosthuizen post that tournament. But I did want to ask you this. So Rahm going into the tournament, odds on the best player without a major on the planet. Now that title falls to Xander Schauffele, right? Xander's a guy that's always in the mix. T7 in this, opportunity down the stretch, gets to 2 under, never really makes any headway. What do we do with Xander Schauffele? And again, you can say what you want about what he's accomplished, what he did earlier in his career, but I mean, the guy is priced consistently on DraftKings and in his odds like a guy who's won multiple major championships, yet the guy can't close. Other than maybe Patrick Cantlay, I can't think of another guy who is as good, as elite, who's priced as he is, that hasn't won a major. I mean, where does Xander Schauffele go from here?
Yeah, I know. We talked about, I mean, him being a local guy and the pressures that come with that. You got friends and family. Yep. And he performed great under that pressure, if you want to call it that. And we talked about it last week on the podcast, and I kind of mentioned, like, yeah, he was what, 9,300, I think was his price. And you kind of know what you're going to get. You're going to pay that, and you're going to get a top 10 finish, and that's exactly what we got. I think it's going to happen. It's just when, I don't know. I mean, if he didn't have the family and the extra pressure, would he have been able to get over the hump? Maybe. I think it's just a matter of time. He's just one of those guys. He's super young. How old is Xander?
Xander's in his, I want to say, mid-20s. He's like 25, 26. So he's still a young cat. He's got a long career ahead of him. But, again, you know, we live in this culture, especially in the PGA, where guys are winning so frequently, so early. I mean, you got guys like Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, guys who've won multiple majors, and they still have, I don't know, 15 years of quality golf left, maybe more. And, you know, so we look at guys like Xander Schauffele. You know, I think the guy that probably would have wore the crown before him but has obviously faded is Ricky Fowler. We love to, like, crown these guys and say, hey, you're the next guy. But, you know, it's more often than not that they fall short of the expectations. And I like Xander Schauffele. He's so consistent. He's fantastic to all the points you made. He is the model of consistency on the PGA Tour. But until he wins a major, man, it's going to hang over his head because now Rahm's got the monkey off his back, and it's squarely on Xander Schauffele.
Totally agree. We'll have that conversation at the next major, I'm sure. It'll be a big topic for us.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about it in 4 weeks when we go to the British Open.
That's awesome. Can't wait. Well, we have something this week. We have the Travelers, right? The Travelers Championship. So let's get into it. And let's, first of all, before we get into it, let's kind of recap how your betting did last week and basically how your model did altogether.
Yep, absolutely. So as you can see here, we just kind of recap the overall rankings and the key stats, which to me are the most important of the rankings. We provide one for form and also for course history. And, you know, the model did a great job. It identified Jon Rahm. He was in the top 10 in both segments. He was 5 in the key stats, 10 in the overall rankings. Part of that was because he had a withdraw at the Memorial. If Jon Rahm wins the Memorial, he's probably ranked number 1 in the overall model. You know, we do have some guys that missed the cut. There's 3 from each side. It's basically the same guys, right? Jason Kokrak, Hovland. You know, Shane Lowry was one of those dark horse guys that a lot of people had focused on for the tournament. Shane had a bad tourney. Kokrak putted terribly. Victor Hovland withdraws after he gets some sand in his eyes and is basically blinded. And in reading some of the notes, including kind of the comments that he had made, he basically played a handful of holes where he was one-eyed and could not see a thing. So I guess we have to take that at face value. But I think overall the model did a great job of identifying who you should be targeting. We had, 4 guys in the top 10. We had 7 guys that finished inside the top 30. So if you would have just stuck even in that top 10, you would have had a high degree of success. Unfortunately for me, Victor and Kokrak were major parts of what I was doing. And so I took the hit. Again, not surprised when the best guy in the world wins, everybody else loses. And, when you're betting on golf, it doesn't matter whether you're coming in first or your guy misses or second or your guy's missing the cut. You're not getting paid unless you're hitting winners. So overall, really happy with the way the model performed, even for other notable rankings, as you can see down below there. English, Rory, Berger, Grace, all those guys were inside the top 40 in the model, all guys that finished inside the top 10. So, the modeling and the statistics are doing a great job of identifying our guys. So with all that being said, I think it's time to close the book on the U.S. Open. I think we've recapped that thing to death. But, again, looking forward to the major here that we're going to have at the British Open in a couple of weeks. But we move on. We've got an event this week on the PGA Tour in Connecticut, and it's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, so the Travelers Championship. So, Tony, real quick before we get to the slide here that I've just put up, how can people get your data? How can they get more than the top 10 that we showed on the slide? Because I made I play Draftkings, right? And I use your data all the time to kind of pick my lineups. I did make the mistake mostly because of your thing with Justin Rose. I played him in 4 of my 5 lineups. He tanked it.
Oh, Justin Rose.
As soon as you told me you were avoiding him, I'm all in on him because usually you miss him. When you play him, he tanks. When you don't play him, he goes great. So I tried that, and it didn't work. If I had stuck to your data, which I did on one of the lineups, I got a 6-6 through, which is super hard to do, especially in the U.S. Open. I would have been great. But as it is, I was still happy with my overall day from DraftKings. But again, the data, if I could get more than that top 10, even in the top 20, all the notable finishes you had there would have been super helpful. So how can people get the rest of your data, your spreadsheet, whatever you're offering?
Yeah, great question, Mike. If anybody's interested, drop a comment, link or subscribe to the Nickel City Mafia podcast, or I should say the channel, and we'll be sure to get it. Also, my email address, if you want to reach out to me, I have a personal email address. You can reach out to me. More than happy to share my model with you. It is my first and last name, TonyAltieri@gmail.com. Feel free to drop me a line, shoot me an email, take a look at my data file. It's produced every week. There's a few dozen people that get a copy of it, then use it, and I'm happy to share it with those. Again, the reason this thing is called the Jags Golf Podcast is we're just another guy, right? We're not professional gamblers. We don't do this for a living. We have families. We work jobs. We just love it. And so if you're interested in the data that we produce every week, we're happy to share it with you. But link, subscribe, comment, shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to get you the data over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. All right, let's get into the Travelers Championship. Tell me a little bit about the course and the key stats that you have for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. TPC River Highlands, it's a Pete Dye track, and it's a traditional Pete Dye track. It's a par 70. It's under 7,000 yards. It favors guys who move the ball from right to left. So you're talking about right-handed guys who hit draws and lefties who hit big sweeping hooks. That's why Phil's a multiple-time winner here, and Bubba Watson's won here 3 times. The great thing about the course is that it basically opens it up to basically any kind of golfer. It's not favoring bombers. The fairways are easy to hit. The greens are easy to hit. If anything, you just have to rely on somebody getting a hot putter, and that's what happened to Dustin Johnson last year. DJ came down the stretch. The final pairing was him and Brendan Todd. You couldn't pick more polar opposite guys to be in your final group on Sunday. But what it takes is you just got to be decent from tee to green. You got to hit putts. There's some key things. Ball striking, obviously really important. If you're in the fairway, out of the rough's going to be about 4 inches tall this week. You'll be okay. You will have to deal with some weather here occasionally. The forecast as it sits today on a Tuesday looks pretty good. So you're going to have optimal conditions for those guys. really no big advantage for guys who hit the ball long off the tee. But again, if you're accurate off the tee, if you're sticking approaches, that's really what it comes down to. The key approach range from this week is going to be from 150 to 175 yards. If you compare that to where we were last week, we were looking at approach shots from beyond 200 yards as a key stat. So again, you're talking about for guys who drive the ball a long way, guys hitting wedges, hitting short irons in the greens. Really what it comes down to is hitting putts. Par 4 scoring, extremely, extremely important this week. When we look at the par 4s, that range from 400 to 450, there's 7 holes on this course that fall into this range. There's also, I think, 2 or 3 more that are really close to that range. So you have as many as 9 holes that are in proximity of that 400 to 450 yard range. So half the holes that the guys will be playing will fall in that category. So if you are good there, if you can score there, you set up well to do well at the Travelers Championship.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look then. Let's move to the next slide here and get into the stats and the course history ranking based on your model.
Yeah, absolutely. So up at the top, no big surprise, Abe Ancer. He was the top of the board last week as we were going as well into the U.S. Open. Abe's had probably one of his best years. Followed right behind him is Paul Casey. Again, if you're talking ball striking, Paul Casey is the poster boy for absolute ball striking. Kevin Streelman, another guy who's been extremely hot, I think, over the last 4 tournaments. And we're not talking 4 little tournaments. We're talking 2 majors, the Memorial, and another strong field tournament. Kevin Streelman's coming in with, I think, 2 top 10s and 2 top 30s. So, again, playing really, really well. The field this week is very, very strong. The amazing thing about the Travelers is it's one of the oldest tour stops on the schedule. I think they've played this thing for like 38 years at this course. So there's a ton of course history. There's a ton of previous winners, guys who have won on this course in their past, in the field this week. But again, if you're talking about ball strikers and you want to know who's going to do well in those stat categories, just go down this list. Keegan Bradley, absolute ball striking maven. Emiliano Grillo, Stu Cink, who's had an absolute resurgence right there with Charlie Hoffman. The Pete Dye specialist, Siwoo Kim, a guy who just shows up and plays well all the time on Pete Dye courses. So you can see that top 15, there's some guys in there that fit the bill for the type of guy that we're looking for that should play well this week. And when you contrast it with the course history, again, a lot of the same names pop up over and over again on both of those lists. So again, I think you can circle quite a few guys, even down the board into the low 7s and high 6s that have good course history or are coming in great form that will set up well for you at the Travelers, whether you're doing Draftkings or whether you're betting on golf this week.
Yeah, so I love Ancer. I mean, I'm gonna have him in my lineups this week for sure. Last week we talked about him. I mean, he also ranked pretty well in one of your models or one of the slides we presented. But we both said we didn't think he had the distance to compete, and that turned out to be the case. I am a little shocked. It's always a shock when you come from a major and you look at the pricing at the golf at the tournament following
sticker
the
shock
major.
For sure.
I mean, we got Casey at 9,900. I'm used to always getting him in the 7s somewhere. We got Ancer at 91. My goodness, so it's a little bit of a sticker shock there, but I think you're right on with the guys you've got dialed in there. So let's take a look.
The amazing stat about Abe Ancer from the U.S. Open is even though he missed the cut, right? He only had 2 rounds that were tracked via the stats. He led the field in strokes gained approached. So it tells you how well he's hitting the ball. The guy just could not putt and chip to save his life, and that's what cost him making the weekend.
Gotcha. And I noticed on your list here, Max, who was a local boy up there in San Diego last week and had high expectations but kind of fell apart. But he's, I like his pricing there from a DraftKings perspective. Yep. And let's see, looking up the board there, who else interests me? Hoffman at 8,600. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me?
I know you were getting Charlie Hoffman in the low 7s here last week, and now he's $8,600. But again, Charlie Hoffman, just like Stuart Cink and Kevin Streelman, they arguably are having their best year on the PGA Tour this year. Stu Cink's won twice this year. Charlie Hoffman, my gosh, it seems like every single tournament he's in contention and it just doesn't go his way. Obviously at the U.S. Open, he wasn't close this week. I think if he finished T57. But again, it is the U.S. Open. Charlie is a local guy for San Diego. So some of those same narratives we mentioned about Phil and about Xander, the distractions that go along with being a local guy and dealing with family and all the things that go along with being home, Charlie was dealing with as well, but I like him a lot this week, especially at a shorter course. He's been striking the absolute crap out of the ball, and he just needs to get a hot putting week.
Yeah, agree. All right, let's move on to the your overall model ranking.
Yeah, so overall, this accounts for not only the stats coming in, the course history, but also their current form, how they've played in the last 5 or 6 tournaments coming into the round. You can see Paul Casey still on the board. It doesn't matter how you slice it. He's having a great year. Hasn't won on U.S. soil this year, but again, he's one of those guys that just consistently plays well. He does have great course history here, and you look at that. He's second in the stat model. He's third in course history. He's third in form rank. So you just can't go wrong on how you measure it. That's usually a perfect recipe for him to gas can everybody, because he's going to be the chalkiest of chalk guys this week on DraftKings. Everybody's going to have him, and he'll probably miss the cut. But I do like Paul Casey. I am a sucker for where he is. He checks all the boxes, so there's no big surprise there. And again, as you go down the board, I think what you're struck with is quality. You've got Bryson DeChambeau, you've got Brooks Koepka, you've got Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed. We're not used to seeing this strength of field after a major, but I think part of the narrative behind that is the fact that the British Open is in, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. And this is the longest flight from San Diego to Cromwell, Connecticut that you could have from one PGA Tour stop to the next. And I think a lot of guys are thinking, I'm going to go out to Connecticut, I'm going to get a warm-up round in, and then I'm headed to Europe to go acclimate to the climate and the style of golf that we're going to be playing in the British Open. So I don't think guys are going to be looking past this tournament, but I do think that's why you're seeing the quality of golfers there this week, as a lot of guys are using it as their last warm-up round before they head over to Europe and start to get ready for the British Open.
All right, good stuff, Tony. I mean, I'd like to talk at some point, Tony, about how you maybe, I know you're not a DraftKings guy, but some of your recommendations for us, for those of us who are into DraftKings, and whether you would go with a what do they call it, a scrubs and duds lineup, where you have a couple high-priced guys and then you try to fill in the bottom tier, or you're looking to go maybe balance throughout your lineup. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, with the pricing being where it is this time, and this course really being open to any style of golfer winning, right? There's not a recipe that says if you want to win at TPC River Highlands, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Guys can win in any format and in any style. And to me, that lends itself to be able to go a little more studs and scrubs, right? You can grab a couple guys up the board, grab some guys down low, because the difference between a guy like, I don't know, Francisco Molinari and a guy like Taylor Gooch, it's minimal this week, right? There's not a lot of difference in the way that those guys can perform, and you may get a considerable discount between somebody like that. A guy like Charlie Hoffman, who we're talking about, who's 8,600, that we've been getting in the low sevens all year, and a guy way down the board like Kyle Stanley. Is there a ton of difference in their styles of game? The answer is both guys can win at this course, and both guys have an opportunity to show up. So if it was me and I was building lineups this week, I'd grab a couple guys up top, I'd grab some guys down low and take some shots on some guys, because I think you are going to see some variance in who ends up at the top of the board versus what we've seen the last few weeks in some of the more competitive tournaments on more difficult courses.
Yeah, thanks for correcting me there. I said scrubs and duds. Basically, you're just going to go with a bunch of terrible players.
Yeah.
It's stars. Yeah. Stars and scrubs. So that's
I mean, you can go scrubs and duds, but good luck with that philosophy. I mean, if you're playing game theory and you're trying to get a bunch of guys nobody's got to differentiate yourself, that's the way to do it.
Exactly. So, like Tony said, stars and scrubs, basically taking a couple of those high-priced guys, and you're not going to have much left over. So you got to find those guys at the lower end there that are going to bring you some value, and also, they change your lineup around a little bit because now you have less people ownership on those guys. So thanks for correcting me there, Tony. All right, let's move on and let's take a look at the odds.
Yeah, absolutely. With the field being as strong as it is, I'm actually surprised the odds aren't better. The amazing thing is there's some guys that again, when I'm looking at these odds, I'm like, that can't be real. You've got Brian Harmon and Kevin Streelman at 25 and 28 to 1. And you've got guys like Tony Finau, Bubba Watson, Harris English, all with worse, or I should say better, higher odds than them. Max Homa, a guy who's won some big tournaments down the stretch, he's 75 to 1. And a guy like Brian Harmon are you telling me Brian Harmon is 3 times more likely to win this tournament than Max Homa? It's just ridiculous. So the odds are kind of all over the place. Big name guys like Jason Day, Justin Rose, Adam Scott in the 50s and 60s. So it depends on how you want to construct your betting card this week. For me, I'm going to grab a couple guys at the top of the board. I'm really going to spend most of my time in kind of that middle range from what I would call the high 20s up into the 80s, and then I'm going to throw some darts, man. I'm going to grab a bunch of bombs. I'm going to sprinkle down low and hope I can hit somebody that checks some of the boxes, right? A guy that's coming in that's got great stats, but maybe his form's not all that good, or a guy who's got great form, great stats, but he's just never played well at this course. You're going to have to take some shots, and the odds are reflective of that. I mean, when you can get a guy like Ryan Armour who's playing very, very well, he's got good course history at 175 to 1. To me personally, there's not a lot of difference between him and a guy like Cameron Tringali. And I realize Tringali's had a very good year this year, but again, you're talking about 80 to 1 versus 175 to 1. In my mind, there's not a lot of difference in terms of whether or not the guy can win the golf tournament. And a lot of that has to do with, like we talked about earlier, the setup of the course. It really opens it up for guys who are going to stick wedges and sink putts. And if that's what you're talking about, that to me is a perfect opportunity to throw a bunch of darts down low, take some guys that you normally wouldn't, and try and hit a big one, because this tournament has brought those kinds of winners to the table in the past. Obviously, DJ won last year, but DJ won at like 25 or 30 to 1 last year at this course, and this year he's half the odds. So again, I think there's a lot of opportunity on the board depending on where you're looking, and you can score some things. Like I said, Bubba Watson, 3-time winner at this tournament at 40 to 1 versus a guy like Kevin Streelman, who hasn't won at this course in the last 6 or 7 years. But again, nearly double the odds on a guy, to me, that's not the quality of player that Bubba Watson is, at least when you look at his full resume of wins and performances.
So I hear you licking your chops, Tony. I mean, it sounds like you really like what you're seeing in the odds here this week. So let's take a look at the bets that you're placing.
Yep. So I could not stay away from and broke my own rule, even though I tried my best to not bet anybody under that 20 to 1. I don't like doing it. I never like doing it because to me, there's so much value wrapped up in that, right? In order for me to hit a guy at that number, I can bet 2 other guys that potentially could have much better odds. So I love Paul Casey. I mentioned it. He checks all the boxes, which, like I said, is probably the perfect recipe for him to miss the cut, but he's 16 to 1. Charlie Hoffman, again, I love Charlie Hoffman. I'm a big fan of his. I'm glad he's having a great year. He's at 35 to 1. Harris English, quietly T3 at the U.S. Open. Nobody really talked about that post the tournament, but he had a great Sunday. He struck the ball extremely well. He's been playing great with unbelievable form coming in. Like him at 40 to 1. Francisco Molinari, major champion, a guy who's been on the mend. He's been battling injuries. We haven't seen him as frequently as we have in the past. Obviously not in the best of form compared to where he was when he won the British Open, but a guy who had a good U.S. Open. He's strung together a couple good tournaments. It's 70 to 1 to me. That's great odds. And then again, Wise is probably a FOMO bet for me. Aaron Wise, I love the way that he plays. I think he's got a lot of opportunity this week at 80 to 1. To me, there's nothing but upside there. And then bombs, right? I talked about sprinkling with all the odds being where they are. You know, I love Brendan Steele. CT Pan, a guy needs to play short courses, but who's won, right? He's won at a course. I think he won it either at Heritage or maybe it was the RBC Heritage or Wyndham. One of those courses, similar style, won there. Taylor Gooch, a guy that pops up at these shorter courses, massive driver of the golf ball, just needs to get hot. Guy we mentioned, Ryan Armour. You know, it's funny. Our buddy Ryan Keefe played in a Pro-Am that I got to walk with him and Ryan Armour. And there's courses that Ryan just says, I can't win at those courses. This is a course that Ryan Armour can win at, right? The guy won the John Deere a few years ago. This is set up very similar, where his disadvantage is obviously being short off the tee. That's all wiped out here, right? He can hit a driver off the tee and still hit a wedge into most of the par fours. Luke List, you want to talk about ball striking? Luke List is on team no putt. The guy can't hit a putt to save his life, but he's always consistently up there in the ball striking categories and stats. And right there behind him is Henrik Norlander, a guy that I loved earlier in the year. I mean, you saw odds on Henrik that were somewhere in the 50, 60 range in a lot of the tournaments in the early part of the year. Obviously, his form has been absolute trash as of late. But again, at 200 to 1, it's worth a sprinkle. And like I said, This is a great week to take shots down the board. There's a couple other guys that I'm looking at. As I'm looking at the odds and trying to figure out where I want to go. I love Answer at 25-1. I'll probably be in on that before it's all said and done. And I'll probably add one more guy in that 40 to 50 range. Sam Burns, Siwoo Kim. There's just really good numbers on guys. Joaquin Niemann, ball striking phenom, right? So there's a lot of opportunity. And I think if you're going to take shots, this is the kind of tournament that you want to take shots in, and where it produces the kinds of winners that are at longer odds.
Yeah, I like your pick on English there. Like you said, quiet third place finish at the U.S. Open. He's had great form all year. No one talking about him. I can see him coming here and winning this at 40-1. Those are great odds. Your boy Armour that you talked about, you and Ryan's who you met and sort of friends with. You guys are always cheering for him. You're right. His game fits this really well. So like at 175, worth a shot. Absolutely. Casey, like I said, you broke your own rule. I don't blame you. The guy's been playing great. I wouldn't bet him. Just, not that I place bets, but he will be in a couple of my lineups. But I'm not going all in on him because, like you said, for some reason, I feel like he's set up to let me down. I don't know why. I just feel like coming off that he had a nice Sunday, and I don't know. Anyhow, couldn't agree with you more. It looks like there's some nice bombs out there as well. Excellent. Let's go back to and talk about, let's kind of wrap this thing up, Tony. So your top three guys to win this thing this week?
Yeah, I mean, if you had to hold me down and with a gun to my head and say, who do you think is going to win this tournament? I'm still going to go with Paul Casey. Again, just statistically, where he is in his game, I think he's ripe to win this week. I love Abe Answer. He would be probably number 2 in the order of guys that I think have an opportunity. His approach game is absolutely phenomenal, and I think he's playing really, really well. And I'm going to go out on a limb on the third guy. It's a guy who hasn't won in a while, but his form is absolutely phenomenal right now. Also another guy that I've been looking at in the markets, depending on where you can get him. You can find him anywhere from 70 to like 100, depending on what your book looks like. That's Emiliano Grillo. Grillo's been playing great golf. Tee to green, he is just an absolute wizard, and you just got to hope that he gets that 1 week where he putts well. So for me, the three guys that I'm going with are Casey, Answer, and Grillo. I don't know, Mike, who do you like this week?
I like Answer. I like English. I'm going to stick with that. And I'm going to say DeChambeau comes back and tunes his game up and pulls out the win this week.
Well, you know me, I'm Team Bryson. Not that I'm not Team Brooks. I love Brooks. My biggest hit ever in DraftKings was with Brooks Koepka in the U.S. Open. But I think Bryson's a great pick. He can dominate any course. It's a good bounce back week for him. But at 10, 12 to 1, he's unbettable for me. Can't do it. The other one that I will absolute stab myself in the heart if he wins, and I'm not on it, is Tony Finau at 28 to 1. Obviously a terrible U.S. Open, but that's usually a good sign that he's going to bounce back. I would love to see the guy get another tour win. He's got the Puerto Rico curse hanging over his head, and I would love to see him get one. This feels like the kind of tournament. The other guy that I will mention that's getting a lot of buzz is Guido Migliozzi. He's the Italian that ended up, I think he was T7 at the U.S. Open, kind of came out of nowhere. For those guys that follow him on the European Tour, he is one of the best players on the European Tour. He is one of those dark horse guys that a lot of people are betting this week, much like Garrick Higo did 2 weeks ago at Carnegie when he won. A lot of people grabbing Guido. You can find him out there anywhere from 80 to 110 to 1. He might be a nice little pickup. I don't think I'm using him on DraftKings, but he's worth a shot at those kind of odds in the betting market.
Gotcha. He had a lot of camera time on Sunday, didn't he?
Yeah, he's a good-looking kid. I think on social media there was some posts with him and Paulina Gretzky, Dustin Johnson's wife.
Oh boy.
Hanging out, watching the tournament. So, he's a young Italian. He's got swagger. He's won on the European Tour. He's always in contention. Just a lot of people don't know about him here in the States. And, he is a guy that I think will be uber popular in the betting markets this week, and you may even see him in the ownership closer to 20% in DraftKings. But at $9,000, I think folks like me and you who follow the markets will probably stay away from him. But like I said, betting market, if you can find him out there at plus 100, to me, that's a pretty solid bet.
Awesome. Yeah. So to wrap things up from my perspective, guys, those joining the channel this week and previous weeks, if you like what you're seeing, please give us a like, a comment, even subscribe. Tony and I do this for fun, but we're super into it. And you guys commenting is how we improve things. And again, Tony's data is available. Reach out to him, put a comment out there for us, and I'll put you in touch if Tony doesn't see it. And then, yeah, we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis. And I also stream on Saturdays, which is all about Buffalo and then some. This is kind of the then some. During the week, we go off brand of Buffalo and talk about other things. And yeah, so please comment. Would love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear what Tony and I talked about earlier on about Louis. Did he make the right choice? What do you think? What would you have done? Anyhow, Tony, closing thoughts for you?
No, man, I appreciate everybody's viewership, all the comments and emails. Again, if you want to get a hold of me to get my data, my email is tonyaltieri@gmail.com. We'll put it in the comments so you get the spelling correct. Post a comment. We'll send you the data and information, whether you're seeing this tonight as we live stream it or you're catching it on a Wednesday or even on a Thursday, right? If you're doing late betting in the markets, or if you're doing DraftKings for 1 day, 2 day weekend showdowns, those kinds of things. The data is important. It can help you, and we're happy to share the knowledge. Appreciate what everybody's done. And Mike, thanks again for putting it together this week, man.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thanks for all your time. Appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you.